All right, so for our second anterior line stretch series, 2 quick notes on this. Number one, we absolutely love the mobility stick. It's been a fantastic tool for us, and there are some specific things about it that are distinctly different. But for the sake of this and for the sake of all of these videos that we're putting into this product, if you don't have a mobility stick, PVC pipe works perfectly fine. Second thing on this one, specifically with this band traction that we have here, we can do this stretch without the band traction and get pretty much the same effect. The band is just going to give us a little bit of an addition to it. So outside of that, Kai's going to give us some demos here. So this first one is going to be a tall kneeling overhead back reach with some band traction. So same concept, principles apply. Big breath in at the start, exhaling as she goes through the range of motion. 2 deep breaths and then range, and then she's going to reset here, come back out of that stretch. So actually bring your hips down to your heels, kind of relieve the body, and then reset, rebreathe, and go. So for this one, we should feel mostly abs, maybe some flexors on this. For those who are a little bit more muscularly dense up top, you might get some in the anterior delt or that pec line. But this one is really good for kind of honing in on that middle part of this anterior line, getting into the flexors, getting into the abdominals. Perfect. Number 2, we're going to have Kai use the incline bench here. And this is just kind of a modified couch stretch. So for this, we're going to have her set up in that rear foot position. And for this one, what we're going to see here is reciprocating actions between the hands and the knee. So as she goes into this, we'll pay attention to that back knee, how she's pushing that back knee towards her back foot as she's reaching those hands up and overhead. And then again, as normal, we're going to come back out of that, reset the body, reset the stretch, rebreathe, hit it again. So for this one, this should be mostly quad and hip flexor. We may get some ab line and some pec line on this, but whereas that first one with the tall kneeling overhead reach is a little bit more oriented towards that middle and upper part of the line, this one is going to be the opposite, where we're going to get more out of the middle to the lower parts of the line here. And for, again, people that are more muscularly dense, heavy squatters, big quads, this one is a really good one for that quad. All right, number 3. We have a rear foot elevated setup here. I like to use a band for this, as we'll see here in a second, for a particular reason, but this is another one where like you can just have your back foot up on a rear foot pad or whatever and get essentially the same effect out of the stretch. But this is a rear foot elevated overhead rotation reach. So for this, Kai's going to start bar at the shoulders, big breath in, and then we're going to rotate towards that front leg. And we'll notice as she goes into that rotation, 2 things. Number 1, she's pressing overhead as she's rotating, and then number 2, she's driving this back leg down as she's rotating. So this is another example of reciprocating length, where we want to try to put more tension or stress on the quad and the hip flexor by moving the joints or the parts above and below the joint. So having that rotation reach plus this back leg drop is going to kind of amplify or accentuate that stretch on the quad. This is one where we'll feel mostly quad and flexor on this, but because there is a rotational component, we'll get a little bit more serratus, perhaps some of that pec line, and maybe even a little bit of oblique on this one as well. All right, number 4, we have an incline overhead hang. So this is exactly like a pullover, nothing unique about this at all. All we're going to do is just use that movement for the concept of a stretch. So our last anterior line here, incline pullover hold. So we'll have her follow the same sequence of steps. Inhale to initiate, exhale as she goes back overhead, and then letting that exhale kind of determine that end range. Once she gets there, we're going to be passive on the arm, so she's letting that weight of the kettlebell kind of pull through the end of the stretch there. And then once she hits that third or second breath, we're going to kind of shorten it up, bring it back over, and then reset, rebreathe. So a couple of things on this one. Number 1, Kai's a very, very strong athlete, been lifting, playing sports for a long time. This is a 15-pound kettlebell, so we don't need a ton of weight on this for it to be effective. The second thing is we should not feel shoulder pain or impingement on the top side of the shoulder on this. If that does happen, number 1, reduce the amount of load that you're holding. Number 2, use something that allows you to go with a little bit of a wider grip, whether that's a light PVC pipe barbell, Viper, whatever it may be. But we should not feel topside shoulder pain. We should get mostly through the lat and the serratus, a little bit of tricep here, and then some anterior abdominals as well.